You have the ability to change things that most people only dream of. I mean, one time I remember I was sharing with someone some of the difficulties that I was going through in the ministry and, trying to figure out how to build this thing, how to fund it, all these different things. And the person sighed and said, Father Nathan, it's true. You have a very hard life, but aren't you glad you have the chance to live it? And that's really resonated with me because I'm like, in the end, yeah, being an entrepreneur is really tough. Running a solo real estate thing is really tough. And yet what you get to do with it is you get to create the most ideal company that's ever existed, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. Very excited for this week's guest, Father Nathan Cromly. Father, how are you doing today?
Hey, happy to be with you. Thank you so much, Phil.
Hey, great to have you, and thanks for taking your time out of your busy schedule. So I was at a business conference where we talked about business and faith a couple months ago, and I thought, man, I have to get Father on the podcast. So I'm very excited to have you here because I think Father is going to, people think Father, and they're going to think faith. And of course, Father knows a lot about faith, but we're going to talk a lot about business and leadership and other topics as well today. So I'm really excited to get into this, but I want to do a formal introduction first. So Father Cromly, president and founder of the St. John's Leadership Institute, really focused on bringing leadership and forming culture for companies, for businesses, for families, also host of the Dare Great Things for Christ podcast, author of the book, Coached by the Apostle Paul. Excellent book. I'd highly recommend. I read it and marked it up all over the place. And just, an all-around great guy that really knows faith, knows business, knows leadership. So I want to get into that. And, the first question, Father, is what drove your passion to work with businesses, business leaders, professionals specifically? Why did you decide to go that path or want to go that path?
It's an awesome question, Phil. I think, foundationally, I'm kind of like a St. Paul mentality. Paul said, I like to go where no one has built before me. And that's just my makeup. I'm kind of an entrepreneurial fellow. And so as a priest, I'm like, well, where's there the need? Where is there the need? And I looked around, and as I myself tried to develop a ministry to help young people, discover their faith, called Eagle Eye Ministries, we were doing, all kinds of retreats and everything. I realized that what I was actually doing wasn't retreat work; it was business. And then people on the church side can sometimes take offense at that and say, no, it's not a business. It's like they don't understand what I'm talking about. You're talking about organizational leadership. You've got to get your volunteers, the training for your volunteers, the paperwork for your volunteers, the legal work for the paperwork for the training of the volunteers. Not just working for volunteers, then you have to have a volunteer maintenance thing, a thank you, a maintenance schedule, an onboarding program, an offboarding program, a volunteer appreciation day, which means you need the second level of management, someone to run just the volunteer coordinator, who themselves has to be a volunteer. So, right, and that's just the volunteers, let alone the food, let alone the marketing, before you know it, like a simple retreat actually entails 6 or 7 different disciplines, all of which, I'm trying to fill as a priest with people. And you realize this is what businesses do. Yeah. They make a product through people, and that requires leadership. So as I was doing this, I realized that this was a hole that needed to be filled. Meaning, if I could, as a priest, bring God's message to leadership, I'd be helping a whole bunch of people who otherwise have nowhere else to turn. And then as I did research on it, I realized, well, this is kind of what the Gospels are all about. Because what's Jesus doing? He's forming 12 apostles. Who are the 12 apostles? They're the founders of a community, which means an organization. Right. Yep. And, it's like, and you start to look and piece it together, and you're like, Whoa. And so they're Saint Stephen and the deacons are, chosen by the apostles. And then well, that's an institution. Then you had to have guidelines and training set down for them. You had to have all these different steps that the church bathes in. Business people do better. And I realized that I could make a bridge here. And that's where I'm interested to talk to all the people who are listening here, because the fact is, you're called to lead, be it in your business, in your home, as a solopreneur, as a real estate person, whatever you're doing in the world. If you've got a burden on your shoulders, that's actually a spot where faith can help. And not just in a pie in the sky way, but in a real way of maintaining stress, balancing things, delegating things properly, empowering others, having a transcendental mindset, looking for a purpose that's greater than what you're doing. And then all of those requirements that faith puts on a person, virtue, wisdom, prayer, discipline, fasting, whatever you want to say, all those different things, they actually feed leadership, and leadership feeds faith. So what I did is I just created an institute called the St. John Institute, which is dedicated to bringing the power of faith into the demands of leadership, and then allowing the demands of leadership to actually push and develop our own understanding about the faith. Faith to leadership, leadership to faith. And I got involved in it because no one else was there in that space, at least not as a priest, number one. But then number two, I needed it. I found more help from business people than from anyone else. More people that understand what I'm trying to do as a priest from the inside, because it's what you guys do every single day. So I've been honored to be blessed by the world of business as much as I've been honored to serve it with the knowledge that I have as a priest.
I love it. And, I've talked about this a couple of times, but you kind of changed my thought process on it. But we need, I've said we need good people. So good people, faith-based people, to be great leaders. But you're also saying we need great leader. You're trying to influence, I think, good people to be great leaders and leverage business as a platform to get that message out. But also, you want people that are already in leadership positions that are maybe great leaders, but you want them to be good people as well. You want to bring faith to them as well, and that will also make them a better leader. So it's kind of this matrix or whatever that you're bringing these different. Either we have a strong business, but maybe they don't have a strong foundation, and we can bring them a stronger foundation. Or we have a strong foundation, but we don't have a business. You're bringing the value to both of them in different ways.
And it's also wonderful because someone doesn't have to be a super devout Christian to be a good person, but that skill that they have, the ability, even as the leadership ability. I don't know. Here's an example. How do you communicate victory? How do you communicate winsomeness and attractiveness to an audience? You don't think that your ministers, your pastors need that? Of course they do. They're standing up there every day in front of 300 potential, customers, if you think of it that way, who are saying, sell us the product called Jesus, and they don't even know how to smile, how to hold themselves, how to poise themselves in their speech, how to craft their message to begin with the thing that's most important for their audience, things that people naturally have in the business world. And I'd like to say, hey, there's an opportunity for you. I'm not going to say you've got to be a huge believer. I don't have to, but I mean, why not? Then again, but take people where they're at. There's room for you doing things for the transcendent good, for the church, for God. There's room for you with your leadership skills there. That's the point I think you're trying to make, and I'm excited about it because by so doing, I open the door to the to the leader that they can find a welcome place in the church. And of course, it's important, but also, and even more, I'm allowing the church to be blessed where she needs it, which is kind of like in the brass tacks of things, of communication and marketing and organization and firing people and streamlining things and saving costs and things that are really, really important for the faith.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, because you've learned this business stuff by just holding a retreat and then building it up. I was actually talking to Matt Light. So Matt Light's an NFL football player from Greenville, Ohio. You're from the area. Yeah. But he built this whole Light Foundation, this organization. And as he taught, I was like, he became a business person by growing this organization. So you're saying a very, very similar thing. The other thing that is, I think, a misperception of business leaders is you talked about purpose and finding your purpose and purpose around your business and why doing that. But also like it says in your bio, success is a good thing. Like, I think there's this misperception that if you make money or if you're successful, maybe that's not always a good thing, like from a faith perspective, from the Bible perspective, whatever it may be. But no, we need good people to be great leaders and to be successful, because we can do good things with that. So tell me more about your thought process around success, and why, yes, we want our listeners, we want you, if you're a good person, I'm sure you are, to be a great leader and to be successful.
Yeah, all the bad people don't have to be successful. You can all please fail and give the success to good people. Absolutely.
Right.
But when the problem is not having money. The problem is when money has you. Is there a huge temptation to let money have you called greed? Yes. The Bible warns us about it left and right. Do we have to be on the watch for it? Yes. Does God give remedies for it? Yes. Tithing, helping the poor, etc. Absolutely. But that's at a kind of a personal level. I want you to remember, though, that your business itself is a blessing to this world. You're delivering goods and services that people need. People are doing real estate transactions every single day. Why wouldn't I want you to be the one they're doing it through? And even if you're a bad person, the fact that you're there doing legal, transactions in an honest way, even if you're going to become wealthy and run off with, it's still good for our society, because everybody who needs to buy a home or rent something out needs a good realtor. As an example of that. So the business itself is a blessing. Therefore, we need more of it. We need it done better. We need more efficiency, because anything that benefits a customer is a benefit. Why wouldn't we bless the world with those benefits?
Right.
But on a personal level, it's also a good thing for good people to be successful, because if they have the virtues inside to deal with that success successfully, and that is a challenge, but it's one that if you meet it can become really exciting.
Well, I think it's interesting too. Like, you hear about stories of people winning the lottery, and they don't have those virtues of success probably to be able to manage that money, manage that wealth, do good things with it. Whereas someone that maybe hustles, grinds, builds it up, slowly takes time, grows probably their mindset, their skill set with their business over time, they probably are in a better position than the person that just wins the lottery and, who knows what, or probably loses that money, if we're talking about money. So I think it's important to understand, like, as you said, be cautious of money and greed, and don't make that the reason you do it, but it is an outcome of it, right?
Yeah. Life is risky. Your leadership is risky. Be aware of the risk and then run it. Because if the business is not profitable, it will go out of existence. Right? So being afraid of profit, I think, is a problem for a business leader, because that's what you need. It's having a plan inside of how you're going to deal with success from a personal level. Am I going to blow it on this thing or that pleasure or this? Well, then you could have a real problem with it. But at the same time, to say, me being successful and me living a comfortable life, that I have a right to, because I have found a way through my private work and enterprise to engage and reach that level of success. Can there be too much? Yes. What is that line? That's up for you to determine with your priest, with your counselor, with your pastor, and with your God. There is a limit. And you can't just sit there and say, well, I've got all this I can keep doing with it. No. But at the same level, at the same degree, what an opportunity. I think we can just sometimes as Christians focus so much on the risk that we forget that it's also a vocation. In the Bible, for example, Aquila and Priscilla funded the entire ministry of St. Paul out of their business. They were business owners, and they gave St. Paul, without their success, they couldn't do it. Lydia, dealer in purple cloth, a wealthy lady, houses 4 men in her home, and founds the church in Philippi. Couldn't do it without it. Joseph of Arimathea pours 70 pounds of anointments on the body of Jesus Christ. You have to be a wealthy man to afford 70 pounds of perfume, and that's what he gives him. Plus, when Jesus was buried, where was he buried? In a rich man's tomb, who lent him a stone. So all these things are there. And I think my message to you guys who are trying to step into that realm is step into it with your faith in God and as his servant, remembering to whom much has been given, much will be expected. But that excites me because I'm like, that's why you're there. You're going to be given much. And now let's see the exciting things you can do with what you've been given for good.
So you talked about different purposes of business, and you talked a lot about the different. By the way, I read a book, Gospel Patrons, too, which is a great book about just giving, and behind a lot of good people that have done great things, there's also financial support from business leaders or successful people, and financial support and tithing and giving can be one purpose behind a business, right? But you also mentioned like having goods or offering housing, hiring employees. What are the other ones that we should be thinking about, whether we're business people, professionals, leadership in a company or a corporation? What are the different purposes behind, like how should we be thinking about that? Like, what are the good purposes behind our professions or our vocations?
I would recommend, Phil, that for your listeners, you go ahead and put on the notes for the podcast a link to the Catholic Church's document called The Vocation of the Catholic Business Leader. Even if you're not Catholic, there's absolutely nothing in this that's objectionable. Even if you're an atheist, honestly, these are human principles that are put out there. And these 6 principles guide and can help you understand and have a vision for the question that you had. And what it comes down to in the core of it is that if you do good work, meaning you make good goods and good services, that itself is a blessing. Remember that your vocation as a business leader is to do the business. Believe in your product. So the very first thing I can do, I can look and say, is my product really that good? Have we cut our recipe down? I just went to buy a piece of sporting equipment and found out that the company that made the sporting equipment went bankrupt in 1998. The brand was purchased by a foreign entity. We won't say from which country. And that foreign entity totally destroyed the product, but it has the same brand. So if you go online and try to buy this piece of exercise equipment, it's a piece of junk if it's after 1998. Well, that's an example of bad business.
Yeah.
So number one, if I have a good company, I can bless the world with good products. Second is that my employees can be blessed by good work practices. Example is, what does your furniture look like in your offices? Do you have stand-up desks for them? Do you have potted plants around? Do you have a nice environment that uplifts the spirit? Or are you constantly cutting corners there too? Well, why not invest a little bit where a person has to spend their day? Benefit packages. And a good example is paternity leave. I'm a big fan of having paternity leave. Why? Because what young dad wants to only have 5 days home with his newborn? Why not give him 12 days? Why not give him 2 weeks? Why not give him something so that we can favor the life of the family when they're having young kids? Another opportunity there is to be able to give your employees the chance to donate straight from the top line of their paycheck. You might not realize that you can do this, but if they can donate right from their paycheck, their taxable income goes down, and it incentivizes charitable donations. And you can even select the charities that you're going to allow them to do that from their workspace, or at least give them a suggested list. I mean, how wonderful is that? The final thing that the church does says is that the business then can benefit by itself, meaning that profit and profitability going back into the business structure allows a good thing to become bigger. And it's amazing to see the Catholic Church saying, actually, that's a good, expand your business. If it's good, reinvest in it. And second thing is then the last thing is charitable giving. So some ideas for you of what you can do with your companies is, think about it this way. Every person who interacts with you, be it customer, be it a supplier, be it even a competitor, other companies, you can witness to your dedication to doing good with. So faith is great. If you can take it to that level, that's wonderful. But already it's like, why should I be successful? Because you're a good person and you're going to make business better. And I've seen this happen, Phil, a lot with companies. When they start raising the bar, for example, and putting faith out there from the faith perspective, they influence other companies that are looking at them. And then those other companies want to do the same thing. Isn't that neat?
Yes. And 100%, it's like if you're working with your vendors and you're phenomenal at what you do and how you treat people, you're showing them how to, like, because they're thinking, oh, it is great to work with this company. I want to be more like that, right? That's automatic. Your competitors, it elevates them. Your customers see that and they start to expect that from their other other places they go buy from. So just a rising tide lifts all ships, right? So I think it's so important, and I think that's around number 2. The other thing about number 3, I like the profit. So that was employees, people, vendors, customers. Like there's so many people we touch in business, and this goes back to, if we are successful, we're going to touch more people, right? There's going to be more vendors. There's going to be more customers. There's going to be more employees. By the way, employees, I think you talked about that in the top line, like investing from the top line, but giving our employees purpose. So this can be our purpose if we're not sure what it is. You talked about a lot of things here. But one of the best things we can give our employees, I think, is help give them purpose behind what they're doing every day, right? Give them something that they're passionate about and that they have purpose behind. So just a
real practical tip on that, Phil, people don't think about: put pictures of your customers on the wall. When they close on a new house, have a ribbon cutting and take a picture and put that up on your wall. That everyone on the team is like, why are we doing it? Because look at the smiles on these people's faces. And then, and get your appreciation from people when you get an email back. Print that out. Put it up for your people to see. Create a workspace where the customer and the greater purpose, you see, is present. Yeah. I also know a company in Maumee, Ohio, where they actually say 10% of every quarter we're giving to a local charity. And they put a big thing up. Our local charity this month is, blank. We're giving 10% of our proceeds to them. So everyone is now being picked up by this environment where how many other businesses are going to be inspired by that? Everyone who goes and sees them is going to see that they're proudly giving back to charities. And then they're a company, for example, that doesn't hesitate to give a church-based charity. So that's also putting faith back into the secular society. I think it's wonderful all around.
It is. And one thing that I guess I've been just fortunate where I think there's different levels of, I'll say, financial maturity that we all go through, where over time, then you start to say, okay, like material things or even numbers for numbers' sake or growth for growth's sake, like there has to be more behind it. So if you can do the example of 10% to a charity in a quarter, and what I like about that model is, okay, we pick a specific St. John's Institute. We're gonna support them this quarter, right? There you go.
That's
how you like that?
One.
That was it. And we'll come back to that at the end. But if we do it for the quarter, man, there is a sprint that quarter to see how big of an impact we can have on that specific charity. So we have a little bit of different model, but I like that. But the bigger thing is, again, bringing the employees into that process, I think, is so important. The other thing I'll add from a business kind of tactics perspective that you hit on a little bit is, we have a meeting every single Monday. We use the business system called Traction, or EOS, Entrepreneurs Operating System. And we have a 5-minute win from last week, business and personal. But then we also have like any customer or vendor highlights. So if we get feedback from a customer on their, they're renting a place from us and they move in. We got one that actually Amy, who works for me, shared at our Christmas party last week. But it was just this very heartwarming message. This is a big deal to our customers to move into a new home, right? And we're hoping they'll be there for 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And just, we showed it to our maintenance person how, like, there's no dust anywhere. It's just impeccable. It's clean. How they're treated during the whole move-in process. All those things are important. And then creating a platform where you can get feedback, and that feedback then sharing it with your employees, I think, is really good. A good process. And if you measure things like that, it can be really rewarding and give, I think, purpose to our employees as well. So one other thing you hit on, though, Father, is you said to whom much is given, as much is required. And I think a lot of burnout. And I think a lot of business people might run into that, or maybe they get entrepreneurs and they get bored with this and they want to go to that, or they, lack focus or lack clarity on what they're doing. And you talked about this at our event the other day, but there's these fears that we have that prevent us from pursuing, trying to pursue more, and maybe we don't have the courage to pursue more. You have Dare Great Things for Christ as your podcast. So let's talk about, like, what is holding us back? What are we afraid of? Why are we, man, to whom much is given, much is required, but man, that's a lot of work. That's hard to do. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Tell me more.
I think you're speaking to something we all experience. Like, business itself is not that hard for a natural leader, like the people listening to this podcast. That's why you're doing it. It's the endurance in it that challenges us. And I think a lot about this because, of course, especially as a priest, I deal with that burnout constantly with people who come to see me. Burnout doesn't come from doing too much. Burnout comes from losing your sense of two different poles, either where you're coming from or where you're going to. Right? I mean, if you're just tired, that's not burnout. Tired means time for a vacation, and you take it. You take a hot shower. I remember talking to a garbage man who built up his own garbage business, doing small towns garbage, and he was just a fighter of a guy. He's gone through everything and he's just done it. Life, and he said, you know what? Every morning I wake up and I take a hot shower, and I said, why is that? And he goes, because it feels good. It makes me happy, and then I realized I'm ready for the day. And that's smart. But that's just being tired and finding your way. Okay, that's one thing. Burnout comes when you forget where you've come from. In other words, maybe you start out with being a values-based person, and you've got ideals, and you're doing the company because it's your contribution back to the world and to God and to whatever, and you want to expand the goodness of the world, and you lose sight of that. It's like Rocky Balboa, right? In Rocky 3, he loses the eye of the tiger. Why? Because he's forgotten where he came from. And then he goes back to the street. Okay, so that's an example. That can happen. Second thing is when you lose sight of the goal. Meaning, yeah, you know what you're doing, but it's like, why am I doing this? Very dangerous. Both of those come from a fear which will rise in you, which is saying, what I'm doing now and the sacrifice I'm putting forth is not worth the pain. And that will make you stop. So if maybe stopping is a good thing, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe it isn't worth the pain. Okay, that's fine. But in the case that it is, and you're facing that, go back and reconnect. Number one, with your roots, with that inner fire. I just came back from a 9-day silent retreat, and it reignited the fire. Why? Because what I needed was just to be alone, looking at the sunset, and being able to pray, looking at God for hours. And as I did that, the fire has come right back again. I know why I'm doing what I'm doing because I reconnected with my roots, right? And then the second thing is start putting visuals in front of you or testimonies in front of you or talking to your customers again, people that are the reason why you're doing it to begin with, and realize that, hey, I'm here to give life to them. And then that reconnects. Those are the two poles you need to be careful of.
And I think just to go back to the money thing, I think if you lose sight of where you came from and where you're going, if you're going for money and money only and there's nothing behind that or more to it, you're going to get burnout, right? If that's the reason for it, you're going to get burnout. So that's why going back to the earlier discussion on, good goods and services, good people, how do you impact the people, whether that's your all the ones we talked about, and then profit, not just, yes, tithing and giving, but also reinvesting that to grow because that's going to compound again, all the different ways you can have an impact. So I think getting clear, the most important thing is, and I want to come back to even visualization because I didn't see visualization as I would think purpose for God as pursuing that, but visualization and using that tool in the church or from a faith perspective, I hadn't thought about that. But it's so important to just get clarity, I think. And when you have clarity, you will have faith of where you're going, which will overcome, I think, your fears.
Absolutely. Keeping it in front of you. I've taken a technique where I literally, right now, on the other side of the camera that's facing me, is a wall full of pictures. Whenever a family gives me a family picture or someone, I put it on this wall in front of me. Why? Because I have to sit here every single day and grind for the gospel. I've got to do reports and hire and do strategic planning and all this stuff that's part of the business world of running a ministry. And I look literally at the people and I'm like, I'm doing it for you. That's how I stay motivated. I think everyone should have somehow where maybe you're not a visual person, but maybe you are, where you put in front of you the fact that you're changing lives, you guys. I don't think you believe in yourself enough. How can you lead others in your company if you don't even believe in your own purpose, right? But if you do believe in that purpose, then celebrate it, embrace it, put it in front of you every day, because the more passionate you are about why you're doing what you're doing, the more the people that are following you are going to be passionate about it too. and you're teaching them the joy that you found in your own purpose for your business. And if you don't have that purpose, if you're just doing it for money and all that, well then welcome to a new way of looking at things, because you shouldn't. You should start to look at the products, the way that you do it, and what you do with your wealth. Good work, good goods, good work, and good wealth. Those are the three keys that keep in mind.
So one of, I think, a key attribute of a good leader is providing clarity, vision, direction to the organization. So we talked a lot about that. So now let's say, okay, we have leaders, business leaders, entrepreneurs, professionals in their work, whatever they're doing, real estate investors, and they have clarity of their purpose, why they're going to do it. They have the visualization kind of done. What are other key attributes of a leader that you like to talk about that help, I guess, leaders differentiate and put their companies in a position to be successful in whatever way that means to them?
I'll speak about two different aspects. The first is character. Character is a word we usually use, especially if you're more conservative in the world, and then you say it's got to have character and this or that. I'd like to make it more concrete for you. What character means is the inner qualities of what make you a good person being shared outward. And what I mean by that is, I don't know, do you cuss at your meetings? Do you allow other people to cuss at your meetings? Why? Why don't we just clean that up? Why? Because it'll make us elevate our speech to a level of excellence. That's why. Are you on time? Do you dress well? When you meet the person, do you shake their hand and learn their name? Or your eyes glass over because you're just thinking about closing on a sale? But that's not character to close on a sale. If AI can do it, right, then it's not character. You have an advantage in your positions that you have of power or influence, wherever they are. Live them as if you were signing your last name to it. Be proud of what you do and how you do it. And by so doing, you will be elevating and motivating, and people will give something different to your leadership. They'll give you respect, because you never said you were just doing this for money. You said you were doing this because it's who you are. Right? That's what character is. The second thing I would point out to folks in terms of what makes for a great leader and impactful leaders, one, having that sense why you're doing it is the pride of what you do, the character that you're showing. Then the second thing is to have the spirit of innovation. And this is especially in the space that most of our listeners are in right now. You have the ability to change things that most people only dream of. I mean, one time I remember I was sharing with someone some of the difficulties that I was going through in the ministry and, trying to figure out how to build this thing, how to fund it, all these different things. And the person sighed and said, Father Nathan, it's true. You have a very hard life, but aren't you glad you have the chance to live it? And that's really resonated with me, because I'm like, in the end, yeah, being an entrepreneur is really tough. Running a solo real estate thing is really tough. And yet what you get to do with it is you get to create the most ideal company that's ever existed, right? Like, you get to say, we're going to do things differently. We're going to find a solution and a way to meet that solution that's innovative. That type of out-of-the-box leadership keeps you from submerging into the daily dramas and providing a kind of oxygen to the conversation that engages your followers and also allows your own passion to stay fed and alive.
Yeah. I can tell just, again, your podcast, Dare Great Things for Christ, or Dare, and the use of dare, like just dare great things and courage behind that. I think first of all, having the character, as you talked about, but then the courage to change things, to do things, to go after it, and not in avoiding, just to tie back to the prior discussion, avoiding the burnout and having the bigger purpose and the vision for you, for your employees, all that. So I just love how this all ties together and goes hand in hand. What is your leadership style for your team? Like, how do you approach this? So character, but innovate. Like, just how does this work in your world and in your business that you can leverage to teach others too?
Well, I think it's by example. I mean, I'd like to think that the example that I put of how I approach the ministry allows everyone else to see it. And we've visualized it. So our staff is here in Denver, Colorado, but our ministry is across the country. Well, how do I get people that live and work in Denver to appreciate what we do across the country? Well, I've put up a sign, literally a screen that floats with a message, and the message is our impact last week, our impact this week. Here are our people, so that everyone coming through the door who works here is encountered. The first thing they see is a screen talking about the value of this place. Then in the decorations that I chose to do, all the decorations are pictures of our ministry. So not of me. I'm actually in very few of them on purpose, but our people, our places, where we do things, so that when you come here, you're in the place of that's proud, that we're proud. And then whenever I just do our meetings, I always stay at the positive when I do my president's message. If I have to do anything that's kind of challenging, I save it. I cut it to a separate message. The president's message is always, we're winning. We're winning. We're winning. It's awesome. And you guys are awesome. And here's where. And you should just see the spirits lift up. It's a real easy thing to do. When you have your ability as a leader to speak in two parts. And the first part be nothing but encouraging. Then do some other stuff. And then have, hey, this is our growth point, and something real positive. People respond to positivity 100 times more strongly than they respond to critique or negativity. Always keep that in mind.
I love it. And, I just think, as you said, leading by example. And then the other thing I'll add to is just the winning. And I mentioned our Monday morning meetings. We have any highlights from the prior week, but we also have a scorecard. So we go through that every single week with our team. And the original intent of that scorecard was just for us all to see how we're doing. But the biggest outcome of that has been we all see we're winning. We're winning every single week. We're highlighting those wins. It does highlight our challenges and our issues to the team. It exposes that, but net overall, we're winning, right? We're winning right now. And for the team to see that is so powerful. So I think even having goals and metrics around business is so important, and clarity of what you're doing, and tying even the vision of what you have and those pictures on the wall. How are you going to get more pictures on the wall, right? You're going to have the metrics to figure that out. So I like that a lot. The other two things, I want to go back to this courage discussion. I just read this yesterday, so it came to mind. But you're going to know because you know the Apostle Paul so well. But in his last, was it to Timothy? But
yes.
He wrote, "I fought the good fight." Right? He knew his time was over. And I just think about, man, he went after it. He hustled. He went through so much. I mean, if we think about what we go through versus what Paul went through, and I know you're passionate about Paul and what he did, but there's the balance of that with, you said you just went on a long retreat. And so there's the fighting the fight, and there's the rest and relaxation, and balancing those things. And you could talk about the Sabbath, and even the Sabbath not as a religious exercise, but just as a practical human exercise. But talk more about this whole balance of fighting the fight, to whom much is given is required, but also rest and relaxation. Like just even the other word I'll use there, because you talked about a little bit with your team, is like being present as well. Like how do we bring all these together?
Sure. First of all, you mentioned my book. I mean, I'm sure you'll have a link to it, but it's a good book. Even if you're not really devout, you can still learn a lot from it, because I take St. Paul as a figure. It's called Coached by Paul the Apostle, and Coached by Paul. And you can find it on audiobooks. If you don't have time, you want to do it reading. I actually read the entire thing. And I had to laugh, Phil, because I looked at my sale number of books, audiobooks, 10. I was like, this is a crock. This is ridiculous. I go through all this effort to make this stupid audiobook. I sell 10 of them. So hopefully you'll be number 11, everybody. Go and download this book. It's really good.
Or get the book and mark it up, and I'll just
there you go.
I think you have a great voice, Father. I am not going to filter. I'll come up with some crazy voice AI filter for this if you're. No, I'm just kidding. But what was the question, Paul? Hustle. I gotta bring us back. Hustle.
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
And rest.
Hustle and rest. The reason I was bringing it up is that in the book I actually talk about this. That we think of St. Paul and all that he went through, but remember that he had a lot of time for rest. Sometimes he was in a city for a year and a half or 2 years, sometimes shorter, but sometimes for that long. Where, of course, he's got his daily grind, like in Ephesus, where every day he was preaching between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock every day of the week, except the Sabbath, about Christ. There was a lot of work out there. But there's other times, like when he wintered in Neapolis. No one even talks about that, but he wintered in Neapolis. There was nothing that happened there. He was wintering. The journeys, etc. Don't over idealize the saints. For as much as they should be idealized and looked up to for what they did, you're giving just as much. I mean, you should be anyway. So they found ways to rest. And so what's the way that we rest? I want to say a couple of things. Number one, physically, obviously, you need to just stop sometimes and go swimming. I was talking with a senior executive at a huge publicly traded company, and he said every single morning he takes a cold plunge in his back pool, then he goes to his jacuzzi, and he sits from the hot and the cold, and in that time, it's his time to think, and he does from 5 in the morning. Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers, every morning would go swimming. Like a whole hour, 3 miles or whatever of swimming.
Wow.
Well, why? Because he needed that to be Mr. Rogers. Otherwise, it would drive him crazy, And so, well, you got to have that. But more profoundly, even though that's really important, more profoundly, it's the energy of the Spirit for you to connect with the love that is driving you. The desire that you have for what is good. And that thing called love, which is a desire for what is good, is a gift. And so we are renewed when we can align our actions, our strength, our discipline, what's hard for us, with the source, like the volcano. And that volcano is, this is the good that I know is worth the effort that I'm expending to attain it.
Yep. Yeah. I like that too. And I like just the love that is driving you. And we've talked about this a little bit. There's a guest I had a month or two ago, but we talked about fear. There's fears, right? And there's love. But if you get clarity on your purpose, and if that's rooted in love and what you want to do, you're going to be able to overcome those fears, right? If that's enough of a driver and you get clear on your purpose, vision, even visualization, what you've done, what you will do, I think if those things are rooted out of love, then you're going to be able to overcome those fears. And I think,
especially because when they're rooted in love like that, even a failure is a success. Like, you see what I mean? Like, you're not afraid of failing anymore. Like, oh, I'm just so afraid. Why are you so afraid? If you're doing it out of love and with love, then that failure will become an opportunity for something new that's going to be opening up. Like, you can't stop a person when they're driven by their heart. You can only stop them when they're driven by something you can take away from them. But if I'm from my heart, and you can't take away my heart from me, then yeah, maybe I'll have to endure some hard things. Maybe I will go through very dark nights. But I'll tell you what, I'm never going to stop, because I'm always winning. I'm always doing what I want to do, which is living with this freedom on the inside of my heart. Yeah. And that's a gift for Christians that we can exploit. And if you're not a Christian, find your love wherever you are and live that. And then you're willing to weather whatever storms come your way, because you're bigger. You're bigger than your failure. Guys, I think the real definition of success is someone who's able and willing to fail. People are always like, don't say about failure, it's a bad word. I'm like, I don't think you're really successful until you're ready to go, like, failure might come my way. Now you're really successful. It's like that from Shawshank Redemption. When you have that guy who goes for parole, it's only when he finally says, I don't care if I get parole, that they're like, boom.
Yep. I think the reframe of failure, and you didn't say wanting to fail and trying to fail. People fail hard, fail. Be willing and able. Be willing and able to fail. And the ability to reframe failure as a lesson or a preparation for something in the future. Maybe the same, maybe bigger, maybe better, maybe different, but it's it is preparing you for something. And if you can reframe that, I guarantee you, I had more failures in 2024 than a lot of people that I know. I had we had failures, right? But those are just lessons, and they're small in the grand scheme of things, right? And it's faith over fear. Not like those things are, again, they will help me do good things in some way at some point in time, I think, right? And
Oh yeah.
and I'll be just fine. So I just think it's such an important thing because I think the fear of failure holds so many people back. It holds so many people back, and you need to have the bigger purpose to overcome that.
You're the reason you're afraid of failure is because honestly, you're living in the opinions of others for you. That's what it comes down. That's the only reason you'd be afraid of it. Although if you're really just living saying like I am who I am and I'm doing what I do because this is what's driving me, then there really what there is no such failure is only something other people ascribe to you. If you never believe them putting it on you, then you're actually finding another way to success. And even your failure may have been a success. Maybe you think you failed, but maybe God was actually using you for a good that you delivered and you did a service. Yeah, see,
Yep.
why not have that bigger perspective? Because it keeps you going. And that's the most important thing in this game that we're playing called life and leadership, is that the leader is the most important thing. And
Yeah.
as long as you're still in the arena, still fighting that fight, then you're winning.
Yeah.
And that it's awesome to behold what the new things will come, when you embrace that.
And I love the quote I have right here, Teddy Roosevelt, the man in the arena. And I don't know if I had heard it before, but I know you're a big fan of that. My daughter for Christmas recently just got a sweatshirt, and you're probably gonna know the scripture verse, but it's what can man faith over fear, or something like that. But what can man do to me? Like, what are we really worried about, right? What can man really do to me? What are they gonna think? And who cares? And I'm kind of interested because people, especially in the real estate world, they talk about like time freedom, like just financially free, whatever it is. But I think I've thought about this a lot, and I think there's 4 freedoms, okay? And this will all make sense here in a second, but freedom of your time and what you do with that, freedom of money, and not letting greed dictate you, or not letting money, like Jesus was free of money. He wasn't wealthy he didn't have money, financial wealth, but he was free of money. It didn't impact what he did. So don't let money impact what you do. Do it for the right reasons. And then you can be smart about money, but freedom of money, freedom of health, and freedom of what others people think, I think is the other one that I think honestly, it probably holds us back more than any of the others a lot of times, because even around the topic of money, are we really afraid of what not having money is, or what people will think of us if we don't have money, like we talk about or portray, right? It's a lot of it comes back to just freedom of what other people think. And that's why I like the scripture verse so much, like, what can man really do to me? So
I concur. And that's in the book, that's a lesson that St. Paul, I think that's one of the reasons why he drove so hard, is that he had no one else to live for but Jesus, who gave his blood for him, and he knew it.
I love it. Well, I want to wrap up here with a couple just closing questions. First, if you just step back and reflect, you think about the journey you've been on, what you're doing, the good work, the pictures that you see on your walls right now. If you step back, how does what you do make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel humbled, grateful, and just excited to be able to make a difference on my terms. When I was back on my retreat, I was writing my second book, and I actually had this moment where I just stopped and I went to the Lord in prayer, and I just started thanking him, because I said, how awesome is this? I get to write what I want to write. Like, it was this experience of freedom, of being like, if you write your book, you can write it. And that was really, so it makes me feel grateful that I have the shot to change the world with my heart. And boy, what an opportunity and what a blessing. So humble, grateful, and excited.
Well, you're doing it, Father. Thank you so much. Thanks just for your time today, for all the training that you provided to the business leaders, to our youth, to families. You're doing great things. You really are. We appreciate
Thanks,
it so much, and we appreciate you coming on. I mean, so much, whether it be around leadership, purpose, rest and relaxation, freedom of what other people think, a lot of different topics, a lot of ground we covered here. So I appreciate it so much. Father, how can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
Our website is easy, St. John Institute, SAINT, johninstitute.org. SAINT, johninstitute.org. We also have another one called daregreatthings.org. So if you don't think about the saints, daregreatthings.org. And that's where you can find my book and my podcast and all of that available for you. Also, if you're looking for recreation, come on out to Denver.
Yeah.
I have a place you can stay right here. You can go up to the mountains. We can spend some time together and get to know each other.
Awesome, man, Father. So much wisdom shared. I appreciate it so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for taking the time. And just as you talked about how you feel and the things that you said, makes, I think it's just inspiring for people to think about what you're doing and how they can do things like what you're doing, or or pave their own path.
Yep.
But to be able to answer that question the way you did, I think says a lot. So I appreciate it so much. For the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Moeller Real Estate, visit our website at www.moellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.